welcome to another episode of Athletic Mastery Podcast UK with myself, Chris, on it. Now, today we have got an amazing guest. He's the international man of mystery. He has appeared on so many cover magazines, and today we're going to go into the world of aesthetics with a gentleman called Ed Akay, who has a fantastic background and a really inspiring one, and a man with immense discipline. So, Ed, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you very much for having me, Chris. And can I just say, I absolutely love the top you set me, Honour Athletic all the way.
Love it. Absolutely.
Band of champions.
Mate, well, I'm proud to have you on board as an ambassador. And, the work that you, Helen, Matt, and, the rest of the team do is absolutely amazing. And, I couldn't ask for better ambassadors, to be fair. And, to have you on the podcast as well, it's only a privilege. And, I'm really looking forward to this, because I think that the audience are going to get a lot, because obviously we've got athletes, we've got entrepreneurs, we've got coaches, we've got a broad audience, and I think this is going to appeal to the masses. So I suppose we better start with your background, Ed. Obviously, those that know about you know that you're going into your first bodybuilding competition this year with being coached by our good friend Matthew White. But sort of tell us a bit about your background and sort of what inspired you to get into bodybuilding.
Okay, so originally I was from a legal background. I then became a property entrepreneur. And it was during that period I met Matt, our good friend Matthew White of Matthew White Strength and Performance, or MW Strength and Performance. And during the lockdown in 2020, I got a bit out of shape. I did a sort of get fit quick challenge for the Torquay United Community Supporters Trust, who are the charitable wing of Torquay United Football Club. Matt then twigged that, you clearly enjoy fitness, you clearly have a lot of discipline. And he said to me, do you want to do a body transformation challenge? And I said, all right, and what's that? And he basically said, we'll get you down to basically below 10% body fat. And I said, yeah, I'm in. Yeah, it's quality. So we literally did that during lockdown 2020, in the later parts of 2020. I think we were locked down for most of that year, but it was the later part. And he basically got me from what he called an average body. And it was like I was in average shape for my age at the time, which was 37 at the time, to like one below 10% body fat. Anyway, what happened then, when it got put on social media, a friend of mine who is Exeter's first ever cage fighter, a guy called Andy Costello, shared it. Me and Andy, we go back a long way, me and Andy Costello. And one of his friends, who was a bare knuckle boxer, owned a clothing company. And he said, do you want to come and model for us? I said, yeah. And then, for want of a better word, things just started snowballing. I started getting modeling jobs. Perhaps, as you said earlier, most perhaps famously as a 007 likeness for various magazines. I appeared on over 60 covers, and Matt said, why don't you just take it to another level and just go into a competition? And so I thought, yeah, may as well. So that's why I'm doing it. Basically, it's like a natural progression from, being a fashion and fitness model to being a competition bodybuilder, following in Matt's footsteps, actually.
Yeah, that is pretty awesome. And you can relate sort of obviously your entrepreneur background and property business background with what's required in terms of skill set to be a bodybuilder on stage, because obviously bodybuilding requires a hell of a lot of discipline, a hell of a lot of sacrifice, and you've really got to be in a good mindset to be able to do that. So, I mean, how have you actually found the transition from, I suppose, an everyday athlete, I suppose, to sort of going the next step towards amateur athlete / towards, you never know, maybe the pro card one day?
Well, if I'm being honest, by nature, I have a lot of discipline anyway. I've always been quite a well-disciplined person. I don't find the diet part too challenging, because I actually, to be honest, right, before that, my only real vice was I used to drink a lot of beer. I don't now, but I actually eat pretty much the same food I used to, but in a much more structured way. So I've not found that difficult. I swap beer for a couple of whiskies at the weekend, and hey presto. So I've not found that bit too challenging.
That's good.
Yeah. So yeah, man, I think that's the main thing. I absolutely enjoy what I do. I actually enjoy eating high protein food. I've done like low carb diets before, you see. Just that Matt, our good friend, taught me how to do it in a much more structured way. And it kind of suits me actually, being a bit of a disciplinarian by nature.
Yeah, I think discipline's a key thing, and when it comes to sport, regardless whether you're a track athlete, field athlete, team sport, individual, discipline's the key thing, or even in a day-to-day life. And unfortunately, we are in a world at the moment that is, in my opinion, severely lacking discipline, and a lot of self-awareness.
Gotcha.
You only have to look at, without going into too much politics, otherwise we'll end up with a backlash on the comment
Get
section.
cancelled.
Yeah, mate, that'll be it. It'll be insane. But you just have to look at what you got to know your why first and foremost, isn't it? And I speak to athletes all the time. I was only having a conversation with somebody yesterday, and I said to him, I said, he's a young athlete, about 16, and I said to him, I says, and he's really sort of hung down a little bit because he's been to a few clubs on trial, he's been rejected, and he's trying to do absolutely everything. And I just said to him, I says, look, I says, you're 16 years of age. I says, you've got more experience against professional athletes than what a lot of people at your age will be. I says, you've got to now hone in on what matters to you and remember why you're doing it, and keep that as the forefront as to why you're doing it, because otherwise you're going to get sidetracked. And it's really important that you've got that tunnel vision, isn't it, when it comes to achieving your goals ultimately.
Definitely, I think you've got to sort of envisage that end goal. Like in my case, it's getting on stage. Initially, it was actually just getting back into shape because of lockdown. So it's like a natural progression, I suppose. You set goals you can obtain and go to, and then once you've got that goal, you go to the next one. Very much so. It's all goal driven. And as you identified correctly, the skills of an entrepreneur are exactly the same as the skills of an athlete. In that sense, you've got to have a good mindset, set a goal, hit that goal, move on to the next one.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I suppose one of the really interesting sides of this conversation, especially, is aesthetics is obviously becoming more and more of a theme. We're in the age of TikTok, Instagram. Unfortunately, there's a lot. The risk is, suicide rates are going up more so in males than females at the moment.
Sure.
And a lot of this is because of comparing themselves with other people. So as a cover star yourself and being within the modeling industry, do you feel any pressures on yourself to be in a certain way in any ways, or?
Sure, it's a fantastic question. So this is how I see it, right? When Cristiano Ronaldo, goes out, he doesn't score a hat trick every match, but he generally, because he's an athlete who's known for his discipline. He always gives a disciplined performance, and he gives it his best shot by the nature of who he is. But he doesn't always score a hat trick. But I always think to myself, as long as I give it my best shot to look a certain way in the circumstances of the time, then I'm happy. So, and I've got out of comparing myself at my absolute peak. That's how I sort of view it. I accept I'm not always going to score a hat trick, but I'm always going to give a good account of myself. So I kind of judge it in the circumstances surrounding whatever's going on, really. I've learned not to compare myself to other people because, one, it's pointless. Two, I'm natural anyway. So I don't want to go down the route of comparing myself to people who, shall we say, maybe not natural, to put it in a diplomatic way. It's no point. Absolutely no point. It's up to people what they do, but I just compare myself to myself in the circumstance of the time. As long as I've, in my heart, given a good account of myself, that's all that matters.
Well, that's the thing, because at the end of the day, whether we choose to believe it or not, we're competing against ourselves every single day. And if you are in a better place than where you were 5 years ago, or even last week, then you're making progress. And if you're not, then you got to ask the question as to why not. Because going back to the comparison between business and becoming an athlete. Because ultimately, I mean, let's be honest, as an athlete, you're self-employed anyway, because you've got to market yourself as, you know, why should you get a modeling contract? Why should Nike endorse you? Why should
Honor Athletic?
Why should Honor Athletic? Yeah, absolutely. Why should Honor Athletic endorse you? Yeah, why should you be part of the team?
Exactly.
You've got to justify. I mean, you don't have to justify to people and say, yeah, I'm the best thing since sliced bread because of X, Y, and Z. But you've got to have that self-belief and that self-awareness to know what your skill set is and know what your values are. So when you go to the stage, for example, you know what presence you're going to bring, you know what legacy you're going to leave behind. And it doesn't matter whether it's from meeting somebody in school, meeting someone in a business meeting, or meeting somebody backstage. It's all about what legacy you're going to leave, isn't it? And I think we're in a time where people need to start thinking more about themselves and valuing themselves a lot more than having to compare themselves and satisfy other people all the time.
Definitely, because I mean, I always think there's no point in being a people pleaser. It just leads to constant misery. And to quote a 90s icon who I'm sure you remember, I think Kurt Cobain said something like, it's better to be hated for what you are than liked for what you are not. I don't know the exact quote, but it's something along those lines. I'm sure you probably like Nirvana back in the day, and I always thought that was a really good quote from somebody who was clearly, quite a strong character and quite a visionary in his time, actually.
Well, yeah. To be honest,
primarily.
Yeah, to be honest, you look at a lot of like successful artists, and I think music is an art, and it's also a release.
Gosh,
and you only have to look at obviously Kurt Cobain going back to the 90s, and more recently we've got I can't remember his name, the lead singer of Linkin Park.
Him, yeah. No, I know who you mean, yeah.
Can't think of his name, and of course Avicii, hugely successful artists. They threw themselves in at everything, but without being negative towards them, did they really have the support network around them to help them cope with those days where maybe they needed to offload, or were they just so in the lane that they were trying to please other people? Because if you listen to a lot of Linkin Park songs, it's almost like there's a cry for help. And this is why I love music so much. And I don't know, and I know obviously you're a big fan of music, Ed, as well. But if you listen to a song, there's always a reason behind each lyric, and it's really interesting. So, and on that one, I know that you're going to be, doing your routines. Is it Bobby Brown?
Yeah, no, the reason that came about, on the actual stage, we don't get to choose the song, but to practice, what we found was we did a bit of TNA. Now, because I'm not the most rhythmic of people, the idea was we would find a song with a very, very obvious rhythm that would essentially carry me. Initially, we started with some obscure hip hop songs from the 80s, and we actually did as well Pour Some Sugar on Me by Def Leppard, but the rhythm wasn't distinctive enough for it to look good on me. And then randomly, on YouTube, we watched.
Sure, it did, man. I'm sure it did.
If I was singing it, it'd be much better. But joking aside, it didn't work. Even though I love the song, it didn't work. And what we randomly watched a documentary about Bobby and Whitney, because obviously Bobby Brown was married to Whitney Houston, R.I.P. And I said, you know what, Helen? What I remember about Bobby Brown's songs was the rhythms, a little bit robotic, but it's like really, really distinctive. And we got out some old vinyl, and then it turned out that every little step, the one from 1989, I think, around that time, every little step I take. And we found the actual rhythm got me. Yes, it's a beautiful song. The rhythm got me to sort of look a lot more coordinated than when I was doing it to other stuff. So it was like just discovered by accident. His genre or subgenre of R&B is called New Jack Swing. And the rhythm in it is just really distinctive. So I'd actually recommend, if you, for instance, have difficulty finding your rhythm, put on, say, something from that genre, because it's a lot easier if it's effectively spelled out for you.
Yeah, mate, I totally understand. I totally get that, because ultimately, I mean, I've always said music is a drug, because it does, you can, for example, Those that know the podcast know I'm competing in strongman, and growing up, I hated like death metal, rock metal, all that sort of stuff. Whereas now, I have to listen to that to get in the mood, and it's the same as if you're in the car just driving. You have to listen to like the latest chart music just to sort of unwind. But of course, you're then going to have those that you don't relate to that are going to drive you up the wall at the same time, isn't it? And ultimately, it's keeping that environment, or making that environment to maintain your mental health throughout, whether you're training, recovering, or whatever it may be. Because they say your network's your net worth, but ultimately, the people that you surround yourself with, you are ultimately going to be a little bit. I think there was a quote from somewhere I heard a few years ago, and it was the 5 people you hang around with the most. You have a little bit of their personality. And I don't know if you can relate to this, but definitely. I noticed that there's certain words that I end up using if I'm in certain people's company for a little while. So like if I go to Yorkshire and see Matt, I'll come back and I'll be like, "Hey up, lad, everything right?" You know what I mean? You get that Yorkshire twang, and it's one of them things. You just sometimes you settle in the environment, don't you? And it's a good thing. So on that one, so what are your in fact, no, let's touch upon Midas Touch Magazine. Obviously, a massively growing publication, which is featuring no end of models from different, well, not just models, but athletes, and numerous other people that obviously yourself and your good lady Helen have set up a couple of years ago, which is making, well, it's going international, isn't it? Talk us behind the reason as to, sort of what inspired you to get that going, what inspired the name, and what's the sort of the plan moving forward with Midas Touch, which again is a proud supporter of obviously on Athletic Mastery podcast and on Athletic the brand as well.
No, sure. Well, so Midas Touch came about in late 2022. At the time, I'd been on the cover of lots of magazines even by then. And I thought, do you know what? I want to give something back and give other people who want to get into the industry the chance I had. It came about by that. And I said, Helen, why don't we start a magazine? I'm one of these people who just teaches myself stuff. And Helen said, all right, then let's do it. And Midas Touch came about. There were a couple of reasons. That year, we did a beach shoot with a guy called Jason Redding. He's a photographer I've worked with a lot over the years. In fact, he's actually writing a sort of semi-biographic book about me.
Oh, I love it.
We've had a lot of success together. And what happened was I wore a Gold's Gym vest for that photo shoot randomly. And with the last click of the camera on the beach, he got this really good image of me like semi in the sea, looking sort of very, it looked really graceful. And it had like the landscape was brilliant. And magazines absolutely loved it. And I started calling it Midas Touch after Gold's Gym. And because a lot of magazines bought onto the image. So it kind of, and I thought, I'll make a mag out of that. And also, when I was in my 20s, I did some modeling. I used to go to a gym, and it would always be playing the 80s song "Midas Touch" by I think they're called a Midnight Star, or Midas Touch. It's a song from the 80s, like it's almost like a pre-Bobby Brown sort of style of music, a bit more, very sort of mid-80s R&B. And I've always associated Midas Touch with modeling and success, so it came about like that.
Wow, that just goes to show, doesn't it, that you when you're in an environment, you always end up with ideas, don't you?
No, you do, yeah.
But it is absolutely.
Oh, sorry, I'm going to say, it's Midas. I'm going to actually find out the exact artist now, just on my phone. So I want your good viewers to Google it. Bear with me.
So what they can do with that is they can while you're looking for that, they can not only Google the song, but they can also Google the magazine and subscribe to the magazine as well.
You can go
So
to www.midastouchmag.com. And yeah, it is Midas Touch by Midnight Stars, the band. I always get them mixed up with another band called Atlantic Star, which I really shouldn't, because it's a song that's been a pretty big part of my life. But
yeah,
yeah, it's an
wow.
absolutely quality song. And
That,
obviously, we're going to be, we've got several sponsors, yourself on board. Going to hopefully put you on the front cover, my friend, because your world is, it's a long time coming. I mean, your clothes have been on the front cover. It'll be good to put you on the cover, in your strongman glory. You do some really good action shots. Can I just add? I've seen some of your lifting shots. They're really quality.
cheers, man. I appreciate it. It doesn't feel like it by the time I get home. I tell you, when I'm sort of KO'd on the setting and everything at night. But it is pretty mega. Well, Ed, I could talk, mate, all day on this. As obviously we had a bit of a chat before, and I think we got to the point where we're thinking, God, we obviously we've collaborated a little for a long while now, and hopefully something that we'll continue to do. And I'm sure we can delve into other elements of obviously your life, and obviously Midas Touch in a bit more detail, and of course post show as well, so we can obviously have a bit of reflection and sort of how did you feel with it and everything like that. But for those that want to find out more about you, connect with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, they can go to my website, www.edakay.com, or follow me on Instagram, which is at @edakaymodel. And for Midas Touch, as before, they can go to www.midastouchmag.com or on Instagram at Midas Touch Mag. Anybody who actually wants to get into the modeling industry should definitely have a chat with me. I can probably put them in the right direction. Or anybody who just wants to sort of have a general chat about entrepreneurship or even just basic discipline. I'd also like to say as well a big shout out. I know we spoke about him a lot, to Matthew White of MW Strength and Performance, he's put us together essentially,
Yes.
and really, really helped me a lot as a mate and as a coach. He's fantastic.
Yeah, he is a top man, a massive part of the show, and again one of the sponsors of the show as well with MW Strength and Performance. And what he's done for us in terms of obviously giving us the platform. Obviously through him, he's given myself and On Athletic the platform through yourself and Helen, and obviously what he's doing, and of course with your great photographers with Chris Woodman and numerous others that
101 as well. He's done a bit for On Athletic.
Yeah, 101, and a number of others that we probably haven't mentioned because there's just so many that are doing an absolutely sterling job. But guys, we'll put the links to Midas Touch, to Ed's social media channels. Do get in touch with him. He is a wealth of knowledge, and he's a guy I hold in really high esteem. And I'm sure you won't go wrong with that. But Ed, from myself, mate, thanks so much for everything you're doing for not just myself, but for the podcast, for On Athletic, and you know what, I'm looking forward to a successful and bright future, and I'm pretty sure, mate, that you're going to smash this competition coming up.
And you as well with yours, and also thank you very much for all you've done for Midas Touch and giving us some fantastic clothes to showcase. Bless you.
It is my pleasure, man. But guys, get in touch with Ed, follow him on social media, subscribe to the Midas Touch magazine. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you on the next episode.
Thank you very much, Chris.